Welcome to this Energy Quick Chat, where we rub minds with stakeholders in the energy industry. I am Justina Okechukwu. Now, South Sudan is looking to position itself as the nexus for East African Energy Cooperation, and that's why Pan-African company Energy Capital and Power, in partnership with the South Sudan government, are organizing the 6th edition of the South Sudan Oil and Power 2023 conference and exhibition, which will take place from the 14th to 16th of June in the capital city of Juba. Let's speak to James Chester, who is the International Conference Director at Energy Capital and Power, to tell us more about this conference. It's good to have you here, James.
Thanks very much, Justina.
Now, tell me about specific areas of the South Sudan energy industry that the ECP Summit intends to focus on.
Absolutely. South Sudan, we think, is really one of the most interesting destinations that investors could be looking at in Africa. It is something of a frontier destination in many people's perception. However, we would want to point out to people that this is a legacy producer. This is by far the biggest producer in East Africa, and a leading producer in Central Africa, if you expand that region and take Central Africa as well. South Sudan has a lot to offer, and it has a lot to offer to its neighbors, as well as to investors coming in. And the energy industry has a lot to offer to its own people and to make the country's economy really, really grow. So the conference this year is based on the theme Engine of East African Growth. And by that, what we want to put across is that South Sudan's fortunes are interwoven with those of the region. Its economy is interwoven with the economies of the region around it. You've got 500 million people in the countries surrounding South Sudan. All of those need energy. And so this is a really critical player. That opportunity is going to be unpacked at the conference and discussed in much greater depth.
Now, give me an overview of the South Sudan petroleum sector and why the country is seen as an engine for East Africa's growth.
Well, South Sudan, as you know, in 2011, when the country became independent, it inherited certain structures from Sudan, the country that it broke away from. But now South Sudan has its own thriving domestic oil and gas industry. So that is structured around investments from international Asian national oil companies, ONGC, CNPC, and Petronas. They are working together with NilePet, which is the national oil company, which has really kind of built capacity over the years. And that's done through 3 joint ventures. But all around that, there's an ecosystem of many smaller petroleum companies, local companies. And in the 6 years that we've been in the market, we've really seen those local companies rise up and take over certain parts of the petroleum industry. So that's the landscape in Juba. And we've been really excited to see how much capacity has been built locally and how much talent there is in South Sudan and how much entrepreneurship is now coming through. No doubt it's a difficult environment to work in, but in those difficult environments, sometimes you find incredible opportunities to take advantage of.
Now, speaking of difficult environments and Sudan in particular, what does the ongoing conflict over there mean for oil production in and exports from South Sudan?
It's a very tricky time, of course, for the region. South Sudan has been through its own share of conflict post-independence, and everybody would hope that never happens again. And the people of Juba and of the country have done a lot of work to try and prevent that from happening again. We, as a company, have not noticed any kind of adverse effects coming over from the conflict in Sudan as of today. If you're talking about exports and how it specifically affects the oil industry, it's undeniable. South Sudan is tied to its northern neighbor with pipelines. It exports all of its oil and gas, or all of its oil rather, through a pipeline system to the north and then to the Red Sea. So this has definitely acted as a catalyst for conversations that were already taking place about infrastructure development, financing that infrastructure, how South Sudan can build its links to other countries in the area that are also developing oil and gas resources like Kenya and Uganda, and how it can gain access to international markets through partners such as Djibouti. So, regional partnerships are more important than ever before for South Sudan in light of what's happening in Sudan. And we're expecting that to be on full display at the conference. We have the Djibouti minister coming in. He's said his group is saying that they will be building on the agreement that happened last year. And we expect Egypt to participate, Ethiopia, Kenya, Uganda. Everybody will be there having these critical discussions.
Now, I know you've touched on this already, but give me a more in-depth curtain raiser on the lineup of speakers at the ECP South Sudan Summit, and how much of deal signings and partnerships are to be expected.
Sure. So the deal signings are a really integral part of what we do. We want to bring people together so that they can take their oil and gas and energy industries forward. And it's not just about energy. In fact, we're also looking at mining infrastructure and any other opportunities that people want to put on the table to that group of investors. So there will be a deal signing ceremony and announcements within the opening session. We are expecting announcements from banks that are funding developments or doing other initiatives that can help out local entrepreneurs. We're expecting partnerships to be cemented and new partnerships announced with regional partners like South Africa, for instance, which is coming in with a very strong delegation. And as I mentioned, Djibouti, Egypt, and so on. We hope for announcements from the private sector. That's really, really what we're going for. And we know that NilePet in particular is heavily invested in bringing new partnerships forward. So we're looking forward to a really packed deal and announcements session. As for the rest of the program, wherever you go, finance is what we want to talk about. And so the money people will be there. We look forward to having the local banks represented as well as international ones like Stanbic. They're coming in, as well as institutions such as the IMF and African Development Bank. We'll be speaking to onshore oil and gas producers from not just from South Sudan, but actually all around the world and all around Africa. That's going to be really exciting, looking at the onshore environment in Africa, which is, something which I think is really, really underserved by a lot of events. And then we'll be, again, unpacking that theme of South Sudan as the engine of East African growth some more kind of across the board.
It's all about the money, right? Thank you so much for those insights, and we wish you all the best at the conference. James Chester, the International Conference Director at Energy Capital and Power. And that's it on our Energy Quick Chat for today. I am Justina Okechukwu. Bye for now.